Squared Spotlight Art Talks highlight member and friend artists of all ages and experiences. Welcome everyone to AnySquared Spotlight. This is a series that we started in December to highlight artists from AnySquared and also artists who are friends of AnySquared. And that encompasses a lot of people. And we are focusing on both experienced artists and artists who are just starting out. So we're very excited this week to have Makeba Kedem-DuBose give an art talk because she is someone with a vast catalog of work and also um, 30 years as a practicing artist. And you know, her works are multifaceted, and also she works in multimedia. She is also a curator and a and is so multi-layered in her work. And I think it's very exciting for us to have this talk with Makeba because we have a lot of young people in our group, and they get to see and experience, you know, someone who's been doing this for 30 years. And she's been a gallery director, and she can talk about that. And also she has such a large body of work. There is no way we are going to be able to cover it today, but we're going to have a little snippet, a little slice of some of her work. And Makeba, you know, one of the questions that I've had for you is is when did you know you were an artist?
Ooh, well, so I guess my self-knowledge of being an artist started. I was in elementary school. Um, I had a very creative aunt, my Aunt Mary, who was an creative person and artist. She she designed clothing, but she was always making something. She was a maker. And when I was in elementary school, I also was mentored by a Jesuit priest, Father Hasse. Um, and I learned, traditional art making, but I was also learning like things like lithography in elementary school. So I was a little ahead of the curve for someone my age. And Father Hasse would often invite, some of his students to do shows with him at Loyola University, which was his alma mater. And at some point, I just knew, I remember my grandmother, when I was a kid, I asked my grandmother for art supplies for Christmas. And I was just devastated when I opened the gift and found a paint by number set. I was so upset. I cried the entire day. It's like, she's like, "What's wrong? I got you art supplies." And I'm just like, "But you don't think I'm a real artist. Why would you get me something with numbers that coordinate with paint?" Of course, I'm sure I didn't use those words at that time, but I was offended, you know.
Wow. You told me that story the other day, and that was like so touching. It's like I have to. The other thing that I wanted to ask you is like, could you give us an overview of all of the work that you've done? I know you've worked in painting and drawing, and I know that I don't think everyone knows that you also make jewelry and also do text works with textiles and sculpture. So could you just talk about the different kinds of work that you've done, and then um also like other projects that you work on?
Well,
Just an
that's big,
overview. Yeah,
broad.
that's big. Well, maybe just
Mhm.
a little bit about each, and then we'll start with the slideshow.
Okay. Well, I do consider myself a multidisciplinary artist. I and it's very complicated or challenging for me to stick with just one thing. Even when creating, paintings, there are times when, I'll start a painting and I'll, get so far along and then I have to switch to something else. There are times when I cannot paint, and what I'll do is go to the jewelry making for a while and I'll create like a ton of jewelry. And then all of a sudden, uh, things open up and I'm able to paint again. So, painting, mixed media. Um, I used to do 2D relief sculpture with paper. Um, I attended design school for 4 years. I'm all over the place. A lot of my work is, earlier work was deeply inspired by the church that I grew up in, which was Holy Family Church, the Catholic church with the original stained glass windows. And those windows just, would just call me. I was constantly looking at them. I couldn't even pay attention to the mass because the windows were so fascinating to me. And I recognized, even at a young age, that there were no people of color in those windows. So that was a concern for me. And I think when I started painting, for gallery representation, that became a focal point. And I began painting paintings that mimicked those stained glass windows with the inclusion of people of color. Um, that, was the beginning of it all. And then, all sorts of things kind of grew out of that.
I think we're gonna start. I think we'll start there with your slideshow,
Okay.
because with works that reflect this idea of using stained glass. This is one of the slides that we have, I think, but I'm gonna go to the one that this one is on glass. So
Mm.
so maybe talk about talk about how you represented yourself in the glass and people around you in the glass, and also these different kinds of pieces that seem to be directly inspired.
Mhm. Well, um, my process is very organic. I'm not very thematic, in the way that I work. Often I just start painting and I, step back, take a look at it and see, what shapes and images are presenting themselves, and what I'm putting down on the canvas or the wood or whatever it is, whatever surface I'm working on at the time. And then I kind of, you know, pull those images to the forefront. Um, I used to paint on wood a lot, and that made that way of painting very easy because wood has all these, the grains in it, and you see often images, peeking out of the wood. And what I do is just bring those images to the forefront. A lot of my paintings represent three people, which connects to the fact that I have two children myself. And so you'll see images called, you know, uh, I'm trying to think of titles. I'm going brain dead over here. Um, Collective consciousness and um, uh, images where the faces are connected. And
Mhm.
there will be three people in those images, and that represents probably me and my two children. Initially, that's was what those were focused on. Um, I find inspiration in so many different things. It's kind of difficult to pinpoint uh, where things come from in my art. And if you look at, the vast majority of my art throughout my career, you'll find so many different styles and techniques and, um, ways of bringing my images to surface. Um, I'm going to stop talking and let you ask more
Well,
questions now.
I just wanted to share one of the images that has the three faces. I know that this is kind of the iconic version of one of your paintings that reflects what you were just talking about.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I will go back to this. And so one of the things that I noticed when I was going through your work
Hmm.
um, is that you work in series
Hmm.
many, many times.
Hmm.
Um, and you know, from your 1990 or your 99 and 99 series
Hmm.
to other series, could you talk about why you work in series
Okay,
and
so
how you work in series? Because you have there like you have the symphony series, you have the artificial light 365 days of sun, you have the best of blue series, you have the American Me series, and I've noticed that you come back to these over
mhm,
years.
mhm. So initially, I did not work in series when I first started out as an artist. That was that came about more as a request from galleries that were representing me, particularly Nicole Gallery, which was probably the first gallery that actually represented me. Um, so a lot of times galleries like the work to be easily recognizable as belonging to the artist um, anywhere you see it. And I was doing a lot of one-offs, they were just what I felt like painting at the moment, and my palette was consistent, but the subject matter may not have been consistent. The way I put it together may not have been consistent. So they were one-offs, and I had Nicole suggest to me, she's like, when people look at your work, there's going to be someone who likes one particular piece, and the other pieces may not relate to it. So it becomes, complicated. And it means that we may only sell one painting in your show because everyone likes the one painting that everybody likes, So it was from that point that I began working more in series format. And another reason why I work in that format is because it's easier for my ideas to flow. If you're doing just one-offs, you're kind of stuck on that one thing until you're done. When working in series, I find that I can create a larger body of work faster than doing one of each thing. Um, with the image that you have showing, that is the best of blue. So a lot of my latter installation type work started while I was going through some really challenging things in my life. And I have ADD and I have a depressive disorder. And the best of blue, I started working on as a relief thing to help me um, to feel better, basically. I had these old art books and I began deconstructing them. And then I dyed them in these vats of dye, and then I began painting on them and ripping and shredding and hammering things into them. That installation is put together with all sorts of things, paper clips and thumbtacks and all kinds of things. And the another series that I worked on is Artificial Light 365 Days of Sun. And that in that series were installation. Um, those began as these little 3-inch by 3-inch Sharpie drawings of suns, because of course, depression and sun go hand in hand. If you get more sun, you probably feel a lot better if you have some issues with depression. So I started making those, I believe, in the winter of 2017. And I kept, I started, they made me feel great. I was like, ooh, they're so nice and colorful. And I just kept making them and making them and making them. And then I realized that it was an installation. It wasn't just a one-off. Um, so a lot of my series, they start from an idea that just kind of goes out of control, and they start happening and happening and happening until I have this huge group of pieces that relate to one another, and then they become very cohesive.
I have a question about your symphony series. Is
Okay.
like these are more sculptural and they're collaged with and collaged and painted on, and I want to know like what inspired you to do this series, because there's a few different like different phases of these.
hmm hmm So I believe I was working in your studio when I first started those. That was an exciting time. And I started working in your studio because I was working on a large piece, the flag piece for Dakota Bright for the, uh, what's the name of it? It was
There's a
Our Duty to Fight, which was a Black Lives Matter show that was at Gallery 400. And those sort of evolved out of that idea. I think originally I called them loud message bottles, but that didn't quite gel with me. So later they became symphony because they're black and white. And I started thinking about how, African American and people of color, African Americans and people of color, scream and scream about what's going on, and no one seems to understand or hear it. So these bottles kind of evolved out of those thoughts, and uh, they started with vintage newspapers, which have become pretty consistent in my work over the years. And then I painted on top of the newspapers these messages that I wanted people to see. There are also Adinkra symbols, in there. There's a lot of symbols, in my work, that if you look closely at my work, you will see all sorts of messages that you may not recognize just by looking at the work on the surface. Um, the bottles, so going back to the idea of symphony, I was thinking one day, it's like, what if we could translate what the message is that we're trying to give to the public about our experiences as, dark people in this world, were translated into a symphony. Um, and as we know, not everyone gets to go to the symphony. So people who do attend those sorts of events might be more receptive to the message if it were presented in that way. And that's really the basis for those.
I'm just gonna share them slowly so everyone sees all of them.
Oh, and that those though I think that's where it started. I was, I believe it was Say Her Name was, kind of in the forefront of the public eye at the time, and still is. And, so it kind of started from there. And then it just evolved into, other things. And I believe you selected three of those that went to the show in the UK back in 2016.
It was only one because of the
Was it one?
post.
Oh my
It
God.
was one because of the postage.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so Robert Castillo says, where do you locate the vintage newspapers that you use?
Okay, so kind of inherited a stash of them, or a cache of them from Nicole Smith, who owned Nicole Gallery. She had a plethora of materials, and I was fortunate enough to have received some of the things that she had in her space from her family. She had vintage newspapers that were from, related to the arts, old copies of Chicago Gallery News and The Reader and all sorts of things. Um, and I think that's where the first vintage newspapers came from. The others I search around. Sometimes I find them on, things like eBay and, you know, places like that or sites like that. I just have this knack for, finding them. I can't, I think a museum gave me some at one point. No, I don't think I know a museum gave me some at one point. So I have, a nice little collection of vintage newspapers right now.
So this is your American Me series, and I think you're using the vintage newspapers as well here.
I am. Those are vintage newspapers from the 1930s that I received from a museum. The show, I had been invited to do a show at this museum uh, that was called Home, and it was in a west suburban uh, town, and I was having a difficulty connecting to the theme because I didn't really know anything about the town, and it was really very pointedly related to the town and the museum and everything surrounding that town. We were given you know information about different institutions and people within that community. And at that time, it was difficult for me to go and visit and check out the landmarks and what have you. So I was doing online searches and I came across one woman who, um, in this town, there's a railroad built there. And back, it may have been in the 30s, I can't remember the exact timeline, but there were people who came to that town just to work on the railroad. And there were a lot of Mexican American people who were there, and they were living in the boxcars while it was being built. There was one lady who stuck out to me. She was a Mexican lady, and she saved enough money by selling, things that she made and what have you, to she saved enough money to come up with a down payment on her family's first home. And I was just so inspired by that. And I was like, this is who I want to, do my art about. And I had been working on the bottles before this series occurred. And I mentioned that to the museum. And I'd asked them if by chance they had any, old newspapers hanging around. And lo and behold, they had a lot. So they gave them to me. And I thought I would incorporate the newspapers into the work that I was doing for the home show. Well, it turns out it went in an entirely different direction, and I could not um, present the work that you see on the screen now for that show. And so what happened was I ended up pulling out of the show and working on these works instead. And they weren't too happy about that, but especially after giving me all of their, their newspapers, but they did respect the work and they really thought the work was great and said maybe we can show them at a different time. Although one of the
Inspiration hits.
curators, yeah, one of the curator who invited me, it was co-curatorial thing, but Annie Holmes, she she really liked the work, and she was like, I really think that there's a way that you can kind of, or that we can finagle these into the show. And I'm like, I don't think so. These have a very like visceral and angry sort of feel to them because they are connected to how women and people of color are absent a lot of times from the media. And also how I ended up using the newspapers for this is because I was looking through the 1930s newspapers and it dawned on me. I was looking for images of people of color and there were none, you know. So I'm like, huh, okay. So it's about, underrepresentation of certain people or certain ideas in the media. And it's also about, how women go missing and no one seems to be that diligent about, figuring out what's going on with that. I started thinking about Native Americans and how women were disappearing from reservations. I started thinking about African American women and children who had gone missing from the South Side of Chicago. I started thinking about women going missing to the sex slave trade, and so all of that is encompassed in that work.
Wow. Robert has a question, and he says, "Do you look for a word that inspires you when you're searching in the newspapers?" I think that's
I
referring
do.
to this and the other
Mhm.
newspaper work.
So I do. I snip. I snip out words that grab my attention. Understand that I don't, like I said, I don't work. I'm very organic in the way that I put things together. So I know everything is not always all laid out and ready to assemble. When I work, I could be working on a painting and then look over and see one of my newspapers and see a word that pops out, and then it goes into the painting. So I try to, control myself and make sure that I don't, just have everything everywhere. So when I'm working on, with the vintage newspapers, I try to make sure that I'm working on the projects that I've already incorporated those into, like the bottles and the missing series. And if you look closely, you will see words, and words that, like print matter, and also words that I paint into uh, the piece of work.
So I think, can we talk about your COVID series?
Sure.
We're on the topic of series. I'm going to go to that slide. This is one of them. Oops, sorry. Can you talk about these three, this triptych, and what
Yes.
it's about?
So, okay, that I started working on that series right like shortly after COVID was announced, as a pandemic. And all sorts of things were going through my mind. You know, there was also, those might have actually happened right after the George Floyd incident. And I started thinking about, I went all the way back to, the slave trade. And you will see in that first image, there is a boat and there's a mast, and that's called Tangled Mast History. Um, they're historically based on situations where African Americans did not have a lot of power in what was going on in their lives, um, and how it's become this tangled not mass, of history uh, that's hard to decipher unless you look very closely, or if you have any interest at all in learning about that history and um, what it all entails. Um, the first image, I mean, if you look closely down in the bottom left-hand corner, there is a modern image of a young man playing a musical instrument, and how, I thought about how his dreams may not be realized as extensively as he would like, based on the history that we have in this country. Uh, then we have the center image, which is that might be New York. I'm not sure. I snipped out the image, but there's also words in the background that relate to what's going on. Thank you, Helen. um, if so, it says March Military, I believe, or militia. And there are these three African American youth running, and I think over on the right hand side, you probably can't see it very clearly, but it's something about how they start running as exercise, and then they just are running. Um, there's overhead. There's an image of a really old gun that most people don't even notice in this piece. you can see the butt of the gun, which is closest to the sky, and it's over their head while they're running. Then the third piece is, these are probably the most political and deep, and art that I've done, because I kind of steer away from that. I like to paint happy art, and life's just not always happy. So at this time, I had to express what I was feeling during the whole COVID and George Floyd thing. That last image is, you can see people dancing on the right. And then there's, in the center, there's an African-American woman. She has dreadlocks or locks. If you look below her, she has one leg that belongs to a cow, which relates to cattle, and how, during slavery, people were treated like they were cattle. On her back, there's an image of a young white girl, and the woman in the center is merged with the woman dancing with the man, because I thought about how African American, and she's pregnant, by the way, African American women were, treated during that time in history, and now in many situations, and how she's pregnant probably with his child while he's, out dancing with his wife, and maybe thinking of her. I don't know. It's just, there's a lot going on in that, and I would have to write an entire thesis to explain this triptych, because it's pretty deep. I'm always interested in what others see in the work and how they relate to it, and if they see what I intended. Sometimes there's not really a lot of intention at all. I'm not an academic artist. I'm, like I said, an organic artist who's gone to school for everything and finished nothing. ADD. But I have a lot of knowledge of a lot of things, and I just put all of it into what I'm doing, 150%.
So there's some questions in the chat. It says, any significance to the time on the clock?
Yes, above that, I can't see it on the screen, but I'm going to grab that image so that I can better follow. It says development and recapitulation, which relates to the sheet music. There's also vintage sheet music in a lot of my work. How we have these talks about, racism and, how people of color are treated in this country and worldwide, if you really think about it, and how no matter how much time goes by, a lot of things, some things change and some things remain the same.
Robin asks, what's the most difficult medium you've created and why?
What's the most challenging
that
media I've
yeah.
worked in? Okay.
Yes.
I would say oil paint, which I don't really do anymore. Oil paint drives me crazy. The drying time. I mean, they've probably developed it a little better now, where it's changed. The formula is better, but it used to take like 50 years for an oil paint to dry. And I work too fast for that. I use acrylic paint. I also use oil sticks sometimes, but I'm more partial to oil pastels. So the answer to your question would be oil paint.
Wow.
It's also very toxic, and that I'm not too cool with that.
I think related to this image, I'm going to skip to the Dakota Justice thing, and I want you to talk about why you created this, in what circumstances, because you said that you don't do political things usually, but these are very political.
So I was invited to participate in the Our Duty to Fight show, which was produced by Black Lives Matters and Chicago and the University of UIC. Dakota Bright was, and okay, so the foundation of the show was related to people who had been killed by police. And Dakota Bright was, I believe, 15 years old at the time. And he, maybe 2 weeks before he was killed, he was attacked, and the police were called. And when they came, they attacked him instead of the people who were attacking him. Knocked out his teeth, and that it just traumatized this poor kid. 2 weeks later, he had an encounter with police, and he ran, and they shot him in the back. But who would not have ran, having gone through the prior experience? So for this exhibition, this was a really hard one for me because we had to work with the families of the people who had been killed by police, and having to talk to this young man's mother, and bringing up all of these feelings that she, kind of maybe gotten a little better control of, over time, and having to talk to her, put her back in that space again. And we became actually, you know, uh, good acquaintances throughout this process. I still keep in touch with her, Tansy, and Tansy, I'm sorry. And she really appreciated, me doing this work on her son. This is the piece that I was talking about that started my work in your studio, because you had the space I needed to do this huge flag piece. Um, I really felt this piece probably more than any other piece that I've ever created in my life. I still, um, sorry guys, I still have a hard time with this, and I cannot display that piece in my home.
I remember watching you make it, and
Hmm.
it was hard when you were making it
Hmm.
to see you go through that and see how I saw how hard it was for you. So,
It was.
yeah.
In the second image on the right,
Mm-hmm.
that's two pieces that were displayed as an installation that was for iconic Black Panther at Stony Island Arts Bank. It was curated by Tracy D.
Ooh,
Hall.
sorry, I touched that by accident. It's
That's
straight.
okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So the piece that's at the bottom is found object sculpture that was created for altar time. Oh my goodness, I can't remember the names of my shows right now. Altar call. Um, I can't remember the name of it. I'm sorry, but the beginning of it is altar call, and it has something to do with creative black space or something like that. Sorry, Tracy. Hall, that is. So it's an altar uh, that connects with West African religion, Yoruba or Ifa, and it uh, several Orisha, which are um, ancestral. I don't know, the terms may not be appropriate. Ancestral gods, or that are a part of the the Yoruba culture, and that piece was created specifically for that exhibition. And and it's called American Voodoo. So what I what I was doing with that piece was I was creating this altar to kind of attack our president at that time, and it connected to the flag piece, in that it was champion, it was addressing the issues of police brutality in this country, and how people of color are treated in this country, and how that was sort of like my remedy at that time to attack back. And I'm not a violent person, but that was what was going on in my mind at that time.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
I think right now we're going to go through and maybe you could discuss some of the other works that you have.
Okay.
That was very deep, my friend.
Yeah, it's heavy.
Yeah. And it's important. And I don't want to take
No,
away
I'm
from
ready
these
to move
moments.
on. I
Okay,
don't
this
get.
is what I was. So we can go through different works and you can describe them and talk about them.
Okay. So the Good Garden, um, that that's it's just very organic. It might even be me. A lot of my paintings, people say they look like me, and I'm like, well, I know my face better than anyone else's, and because I do faces, I become the model for a lot of my paintings. Uh, More unintentionally, though. I don't really like set out to do a bunch of self portraits. In fact, I have done very few self portraits in my life. But I I really just think about the whole stained glass thing when I'm creating these works, and whatever kind of comes through as a stained glass piece is what happens. You know, it's not like I set out to paint this woman, and houses in the background. Also, this painting was started years before I completed it, and that happens a lot with me too. I will start working on a painting, and because I have ADD, I can get distracted and then I lose the momentum, connected to the piece. So I'll set it aside, and then years later I'll come back to it and it becomes a part of another series somehow. I can also take like a lot of different separate pieces that I've worked on and pull them together to create a series, even though they were not connected initially. And yeah, so the good garden, it just reminded me of a garden and this woman. So there's some little innuendos in there. It's like, women are a good garden, you know, and that's kind of where the good garden title comes from. This beautiful woman who's a garden of goodness.
Here, I've been putting pictures of you next to the things for scale.
Mhm.
So, so what about this piece? This is also the garden series. It's a garden series.
Yes, this is called Embrace, and I definitely started this one quite a while back before finishing it, and it was my two children and myself. And in the center, you see these figures, and they represent our ancestors. Often in a lot of my paintings, you'll see these little figures in the background, these figures of people, and those represent ancestors. Um, I was raised Catholic, but I am very much connected to that whole West African religious thing. So that comes through in a lot of my work. Um, when I started this painting, I was with both of my children, and moved around a lot during a divorce that occurred over 4 years. When I came back to this painting, a lot had changed, and that is my oldest child in the left hand side, and me on the right hand side in the background, and my youngest in the center. Uh, we're embracing Wyatt because they were separated from us. And it's really just a protective piece about my child. But you can feel the sort of the spiritual energy and the stained glass, you know, concept in it, uh, probably in most of my work. So I'm a deeply spiritual person. I'm not necessarily a religious person because I think there is some connective tissue in all religions. They're all connected to me, and therefore I always say I am either all of them or none of them. I embrace everyone, I like to combine nature with humans, Uh, you will see that in a lot of my work. There are lots of floral and leaves and things like that that connect the people. When I first started painting, it was all about the line and how these lines connected everything in the picture plane. As I've, evolved in how I work, the lines are still there, but a little less significant uh, as they were in my earlier work. They were just like lines, you saw the lines before you saw anything. And so I think I've come to a point, where I'm getting rid of the line, or it's going, it's kind of disappearing into the background a little more.
So this one is the same piece, but at different stages. Could you talk
Yeah.
about that process?
So I think sometimes I tend to overwork pieces. I'm kind of a little OCD like that. It's like I'm like like okay, so the image on the right, many people thought that was a great painting. It was finished, but it didn't feel finished to me. And the more I worked on it, it it you know kind of got further and further away from the beginning. I should also mention that I started working on that piece for a gallery show, and that also sometimes, causes me to overwork the piece because I'm trying to finish it for a show. And I get like ridiculous with the details, and then I may not have the time to put the glazes over the changes that I've made, and but fortunately for me, the painting sold, and a lot of paintings that I do that, I may feel are overworked, they sell, I don't know if that's good or bad, but it happens that way sometimes. And maybe I would have sold it, as the right image or the left image, who knows? But I do like the image on the right, on the left, but to me it has a lot of chaotic energy, but that does relate to what I was thinking about, rage. And I guess I kind of tempered the rage in the softening of the colors. It's cooler uh in the final product, whereas it was red hot before. Very rage filled.
So these are two different paintings that you had tagged as love notes.
Hi, Dewan. I'm sorry, I just saw the one with a question. um Say that again, Tracy.
Oh, these you titled love notes.
Hmm.
And what are these about? One's a self-portrait.
I
You said you
started
don't do usually do them.
right. Honestly, I don't. That didn't start out being a self-portrait, but when it was in that phase right there, because that's not the end result, and I won't show that painting again until I find a situation. But I looked at it at this point, and I was like, that looks kind of like me, you know. So I guess I will title this one a self-portrait. These were done on the vintage sheet music, which I also inherited from Nicole Smith. Um, and I think I had been invited to do a show with uh, David Boykin, a Chicago musician, and the title of the show had something to do with love. And I just started doing these paintings on the sheet music. The first image to the left is a couple, um, you know, kissing. Um, I have a series titled Conversation or Abstract Conversation. So this fits into that theme, you know. Um, Yeah, I'm sorry, I lost what I'm supposed to be talking about.
Just the paintings, whatever you want to say about them, and
Yeah,
I can show your abstract conversations. Would you like to?
sure, but let me finish with these.
Yeah.
So you'll also find like angels in my paintings a lot. Angels as ancestors or ancestors as angels. Uh, you can see there are like angel. There's an angel in the background of each of these, and um, they just kind of represent protection, and love. You know, sometimes I can't really explain why I paint about the things that I paint. Like I said, I'm not an academic artist, so I don't really think about thematics that much. I just paint, and what you see is what you get, you know.
I'm gonna go to the abstract ones because they're very different than a lot of the paintings that we've seen. You have such a vast array of work. It's kind of amazing. So what are so I have these and then these two.
Yeah,
And and what are these about? What are they made of?
they're mixed media. There is acrylic, there's house paint, and found objects. You know, I these paintings are one-offs actually. I was experimenting,
Mhm.
and they they just kind of happen. They don't really have any background information. I don't have any background information on them. I was just painting like I normally do, and I liked what I did, and I sold those to one collector who just bought a bunch of stuff at one time. He was more interested in my one-offs, so he took those off my hand. But it is something that I intended to go back and build a series around, and that's one of the examples of how that happens. How I end up working in series. I might just be experimenting, and then I'll finish something that I really like, but don't really have the time or the inspiration to work on it further. So I set it aside, and then I'll pull it out later and create works that fit into you know what's going on in those paintings and create a cohesive collection or body of work from that.
These are also in some abstraction series, but they're very different from those.
Yeah, those are abstract conversations which preceded
Yeah.
the previous pictures, and these are a little more thought out. The conversation, like how things juxtapose, against other things. The piece on the left actually can be viewed from either side. You can see, if you turn that painting all the way around, upside down in this instance, it will read entirely differently. Um, about how the materials relate to each other on the picture plane.
I know I know that you've done a lot of textile pieces and there's so many and I'll actually share with everyone your everyone can look at things on her Facebook and her Instagram and there's so much stuff that you've done. But the one at the left is not a textile piece but informed by textiles. Can you talk about these two pieces?
Okay. So I'll start with the image on the right, which is a textile piece, and it was a mask series that I did, and it's called Angel Mask. They were, it's just a whole series of masks with these angels like on the mask. Um, that textile series started, I think, in 2011. How it came about was kind of funny. It was I was teaching at the time and teaching art to elementary and high school students when I was youth art program director slash this, that, and the other for youth service project back at that time or prior to that time. Um, so I was teaching my students about, oh goodness, Faith Ringgold's work, um, who is a textile artist, painter. Uh, and after teaching that workshop, I had all of these materials left over. And I was like, what am I going to do with all of this stuff? Because it's not, they weren't materials that I normally would use. So I started making these little patchwork pieces. And they're, I call them patchwork, but there's very little sewing involved. I use fabric glue and I paint it on top of fabric. Painted and collage fabric into these pieces. They're layered fabric art, and I did so many of those that so at the end of I decided to use the materials and make these pieces, and it was probably October of 2011, and I after I finished making about 13 to 15 of them or so, I said to myself, what am I going to do with these? No one's going to want these, And a little voice was like, I'll just post them on Facebook for the holiday season. So I did. They were gone in no time fast. Of course, I was selling them for like $50, which was way out of my price range for my art. And I spent that entire winter making these things like to meet the demand. And I was just like making them and making them and making them and selling them and selling, so that's how that started. And I think I did that through 2015 or so. They were actually a good source of income during, the holiday season for those years. And that's how the textile art started. It was called Patchwork Series While I Patched My Life Back Together, because that was also during that divorce period. And the previous slide, sermon, that the materials for that actually came from your studio as well. It was some religious books, I believe, and this page was Sermon on the Mount, and I used that. I changed all of the people who were in there. I turned them into Black people. They were all white people before, and it just reminded me of the church I grew up in. And so that's something that I do even in the Missing series. If you look closely, a lot of the people in the background images on the newspapers, of course they were all white people back in the 1930s. I changed them into Black people, and that was to put Black people into the story, that we're often deleted from or just missing in general. And it does relate to the textile pieces in that it's a patchwork of, different design. There's fabric in there too, but not to the extent of the patchwork series.
Robert asks, how big is Sermon?
Sermon is small, it should be big. It feels big, but it is probably like 9 by 12 at tops. I've had lots of people try to buy that from me and I won't sell it. I don't know. I'm attached to it. It's one of my favorite pieces. It also reminds me of my grandmother, so it's kind of difficult to let it go. I think I will probably do a painting from that piece at some point.
So this one's on wood and it's mixed media, and this one's a little different than some of the others, but related to.
That's probably, a little more experimental. So how that one came about is I also had a series that I don't think you may have found because it goes pretty far back, but it was called the Service series, and it was so I'd found these kind of they reminded me of serving trays, but it was from this lumber yard, over on Armitage Avenue, um, near Fullerton, I believe. And they always give away free wood. So artists out there, that's a good place to go and grab some materials. One day I was driving by there, and they had a bunch of trays sitting out, and I was like, can I take these? And they were like, yeah. So I piled, like, I don't know, there were tons of them into my little car and drove them home. And I kept looking at them, and they're like, they look so much, they are the basis for a serving tray. So I created these serving tray type pieces, and I put these copper pipes on either side to, give them some depth. And because I love copper too. Um, and those were very popular when I made them. And at some point, because I was storing the trays in my backyard, and they started getting wood rot. And then I lost some when I moved from a place that I was at one point. So they kind of died out, but I still had a few around that were sort of halfway done. And this started out being totally different from what it ended up being. I don't know if you can tell this, but it was like a mother and child image, or like these two connected faces images originally.
Mhm.
And I just started doing more stuff on top of it, and that central face, kind of came to light. And now it looks like, it still looks like the two faces sort of, but in a different way. I call it shaman because it reminded me of someone I know who I call a shaman. And it's sort of like this trickery image, kind of energy going on, and uh, kind of not quite this and not quite that, and this merging of energies. And yeah, it made me think of shaman energy. I don't know if everyone knows what a shaman is, but and I'm not going to go into all of that, but yeah, it just reminds me of that type of energy. That's one of my favorites too.
Mhm.
I gave it to the person who reminds me of a shaman.
So this one's on glass.
Mhm. I went through a period of painting on glass, on top of glass. Now, some artists do reverse glass painting. This isn't really in reverse, but what it is, and this is something that I've done several times, where I will have a painting that I did that's framed, and it hung around for a while, and it's just kind of been there for a while. So I just start painting on top of it and leave the frame piece underneath, so you can see like some of the color and uh, uh, lines and such from the previous or the art that's underneath through the glass, and then the painting on top of it as well at the same time. Uh, and these pieces is like you're getting two pieces of art in one, and it's a good selling point. I don't know if anyone would ever take it apart, because that would kind of destroy the top image. But yeah, that's what's going on there. And I think you have another slide of another piece like that. It's called Sunrise at the Sunset.
Oh,
Yeah, that's on glass too.
oh wow.
Hmm. And there are, bits and pieces of the art that's underneath coming through. And actually, in both of those paintings, the art that's underneath was a part of a series of uh, monoprints. I titled them something differently at that time, because it was like not quite a monoprint in a way, because I was printing from a print from a print from a print to create these images. So I did the original art, and then I did a print from that, and then I did a print from the print, and it just kept going on. Um, but it wasn't a very popular series, and they hung around for a while. There was some interest, but nothing major. So I transformed them and began painting on top of those within the frame.
How about this one?
That's very, very old. That's I started that and I haven't worked on it since, but I started that painting probably in 2007, 2008. It's huge. It's like what you can see in the caption, 7 feet by 10 feet. And so there was a series that I had called the Gathering series, which was, very much like what you see here, people gathering around. And this one is the Gathering series. Also, it's if you see that the figure down at the bottom in all white, the little boy with his back to us, um, you know, that became the most important part of this painting. That's why it's called Gathering of the Suns, and it's related to gun violence and police brutality. And so we're gathering them together to protect and heal them. If you look closely, there's a child on the shoulders of one of the figures, and it's the child is holding a gun. There's also two other guns on the left-hand side. So it's all about, gun violence and community and how we find ways to protect and heal one another. Also older, probably started around the same time and finished around 2019, I believe. Um, so roughly 10 years later, I went back and finished these paintings. Um, the previous slide, that painting was so huge that I had to take it off the stretchers to move it around. And so I kind of forgot about it. And I just recently pulled it out and was like, oh, that's where that went. And I'm not sure if I want to work on it anymore. I'm not, it, in a way it feels incomplete, but then in a way it feels complete. So I'm still thinking on that one. But this one, Oh Happy Day, I woke up one morning and that song was on my mind. It was one of my favorite childhood spiritual songs. I was in the choir and all of that growing up. And it just makes me happy. It just feels like a happy day. Everyone's kind of gathered together and having some fun. Um, so, yeah, that's what's going on. And you also get the stained glass effect. And um, yeah, I don't know what else to say about that one. It's just happy.
There, I think I'm gonna go backwards. And I know that you talked about this a little bit, but this is the newer series kind of related to the other one. It's very
Yeah.
graphic and the lines are so clean.
Mhm.
So can you talk about these?
So these were they evolved from a series that I did in 1999. I was pregnant with my youngest child, and so you think 9 month gestation pregnancy period, and then it was 1999. I did 99 pen and ink drawings, and it was for I installed it as an installation, all 99 pieces as an installation for Around the Coyote that year in 1999. I had a studio in the Flatiron Arts Building at that time. And coincidentally, the show opened with no input from me on 9/9/1999. So it was just powerful how everything connected in that year in that way for me. So years later, I had like thousands of those posters that I printed. I started cutting them up and you know uh, making magnets out of them, which was in the previous slide. And these pieces, Sketchbook 99, evolved from the 99 and 99 series. Now, the Sketchbook 99 pieces are drawn with Sharpie marker on top of old postcards. They're postcards from an event that I curated for Chicago Global Health Alliance, which I was the creative director for them. Uh, I have been for many years. So it was one of the postcards from one of our events because I curated their art auction events. And I had all these excess postcards, and I just started drawing on them. And kind of like the suns, they just kept going and going and going until it became a whole series of work that I still do now. Eventually, they will just be on, post, on paper that's not a postcard. I really enjoy doing those. They're very graphic and just very sharp and strong imagery. I've had a lot of people approach me to use those for tattoo designs also.
Yeah, they're beautiful. I think we're gonna go to these.
Makeba, you said those were magnets?
There were some on the left-hand side of one of the slides next to the posters on the right.
Okay.
Those were the magnets.
Okay.
So more work that was created last year in the depth of the COVID pandemic, probably somewhere between March and May, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was just what I was feeling at that time, find your flow. It's just like, I'm stuck here alone, for days, weeks on end. And it's like I have to find a way to balance myself and not lose it in the middle of this, because too much alone time can start to affect you in bad ways. But for me, I mean, I spend a lot of time alone, even outside of COVID, because once I get into my work, I really don't think much about the outside world. In fact, there are times when I get in that creative mode, nothing else is important, and I have to watch myself because I'll forget to eat. I mean, it'll be like in the middle of the night, and I realize I haven't eaten all day. And I do tend to work like from midnight till 6 a.m. when I'm really producing work. And there have been times when I will go 2 days in a row without sleep because I'm just so into it, I can't stop. So these pieces just, like I said, they started out as collages, and then I started doing paintings from the collages.
You can see the paintings in her social media in the Instagram. You have like the two next to each other.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of people ask me, what does the hole mean, on her mouth, in the masked one. Well, so if you look at what's going on around her, I can't read it from here. I can't see it clearly enough, but it's talking about beauty products, and the ad reads, do this to have this kind of hair or whatever. And basically I'm saying whole as is complete enough. I do not need to adhere to anyone else's beauty standards to be considered beautiful. And nor does anyone else. You just need to be yourself. And if you love who you are and what you look like, nothing else really should matter. The centerpiece actually looks a lot like my youngest child, Wyatt. And find your flow. Wyatt is transgender and just so confident and self-assured about who they are. They don't care what anyone thinks about it, and I just I admire that so much. So it relates to the last piece on the right, in that you shouldn't really care what anyone thinks, especially White is very fortunate that they have their family is, we support them, 100%, but that's not always the case. And I think about, kids out here who are committing suicide because they feel differently than the world says they should. And, it's hard to cope like that. And I am a strong advocate for, people who are going through that. I want to, you know, be an ally, you know. Um, and then the first one, attractive. It's all really kind of based on the same things. And I probably at that time I was probably probably looking a hot mess because I had been in my studio for days, weeks on end, not really caring what I look like. You're welcome, Robert. And I'm like painting, I don't care what anybody thinks right now about what I look like. Um, and it's also about women and how the world treats women, discrimination against women or femmes. And that first piece, actually, Wyatt chose that piece, and I gave it to them. Uh, Oddly enough, they did not choose the piece that I think looks like them, and other people think looks like them as well. But they gravitated towards that first one, and that first one is about, it probably connects to, women in the sex slave trade. I think on somewhere in there it says something about church booty, and how women are, uh, female and male children are molested, sometimes even in the church. Um, and she says something about all I need is a room for, I can't read it, Tracy.
Dressing in the morning, safe and sound, dependable, convenient to everything.
Yeah, so it's relating. It's also, it speaks to homelessness, and it speaks to a lot of things, disconfiguration, ideals about beauty, and how women can just disappear and nobody seems to give a damn.
I didn't have titles for these.
Oh, it's okay. It's just the COVID series. I don't know if I gave them individual titles. These are all postcard size pieces too. They were just little collages, and I was just kind of doing something. In fact, I had not been able to create for quite some time. And when I did these, I remember posting them on Instagram saying, "Yay, I'm so happy I was able to make something." And so that's where they came from. And they do incorporate the vintage newspapers, old images from magazines and such. The first one connects with slavery and the aftermath, and women, and free women. Where uh, I still think in many ways women are still prisoners of the world. Um, Recaptured America's 12-month plan to recapture. That had a lot to do with uh, 45 and, what was going on and how we seem to be going backwards, after all of the progress that we've made, and, in regard to race and prejudices connected to all sort of things, immigration, sexuality, gender, all of those things. We just seem to always, like I said, development and recapitulation. We start something, we get so far, and then we go backwards again. And no one fish in the middle. That was also political, related, speaking to immigration and foreigners, and how I felt we were like really in a dark place, and no one fish in the middle relates to there not being enough women in politics to have a say in what's going on with women. And I think women tend to speak for everyone because, the ones of us who do decide to uh, procreate, we have a very we have a deep connection to everyone because we have given birth to the world. And you know I think that women in politics will have a greater impact on how things are done, because we will think for the good of all, and not just for me, because we think of our children and we think of our children's children and so on and so forth.
There's some things that you collaborate with people all the time. there's a couple examples of collaborations. And then after that, we're going to talk about some of your curation. So
I love collaborations. I don't think everyone does. And I think you have to be a certain kind of artist to do collaborations because artists have big egos, me included, you know, about what we do. What did Erica Badu say? It's my shit and I'm sensitive about it or something like that. Yeah, so doing a collaboration with another artist is something. So the first, let's see, the first collaboration I did was with Nicholas Barron, and we call ourselves Makeba. We only did the 2 pieces. They're massive because we started doing them last summer. And as things heated up with COVID, you know, we were doing it in the middle of COVID in the summertime, but I think Nicholas is a little more freer about how he feels about COVID and wearing masks and stuff. And I wasn't getting down with that 100%. It's like, yeah, put your mask on, dude. And, you know, so we did the 2 pieces, and the first one sold to an international collector who found it on Instagram. And, you know, we did the second one. The first one was done at his studio. The second one was done at my studio. And we plan to do more, but I'm not sure when that will happen. It was intended to be an ongoing collaboration, but it slowed down because of COVID. Hi, Robin.
So I just put this in here because, you know, this is one of the things we invited you to be one of the artists on the you know, football field long dog park mural in Logan Square.
Yeah.
We were out there painting with you all the time for a few weeks.
Yeah. So you can see scale. That's me down there, little person under, you know, by the huge dog. And then the smaller image, that's Tracy's image next to my image. And I don't know who's on the other side of Tracy. But so I've only done a few murals. I see Naomi. Hi, Naomi. Yes. So I've done very few murals because I have a fear of heights. And Tracy had to kind of babysit me through that process. We go, like, I don't want to get on the scaffold, but I did. And you know, I was comfortable working at ground level, but when I had to, you know, get on the scaffolding to do the top of the dog and the sun and the background and all of that, I was not happy at all. But I got through it. Yes, they are. And we were working on this for weeks, you know, and it was hot and it was, oh, I don't know if I'll ever do another mural again in my life, Tracy, after that, but it was a really wonderful experience because I was working with such beautiful people and you, of course, who are, you know, a very beautiful person. And I pushed through it and I'm happy that I did.
Thank you.
That's the largest piece that I've ever done to date.
Makeba, do you have any kind of connection with the dog, or like what inspired you to make that the way it looks?
English Bull Terrier. One of my exes, he bred English Bull Terriers, and they're interesting dogs. You know, I think they get a bad rep because, you know, but they were really sweet dogs. I love those dogs. So, and I'm not really an animal person, but there was one dog that was the one that my youngest child and I named. Well, my youngest child named that dog Thule. And so I painted Thule when I was invited to do, you know, something for the dog park.
Oh, great. So no pets now, though?
Nope. They're not allowed in my building.
Okay.
First of all. I do have a pet, but it doesn't live with me. I don't see it very often. Lily is our little heart. It's our family dog.
Okay,
And
nice.
Lily is like crazy. Lily is old. Lily's probably like 17 years old. And Lily is a mix between a poodle, a chihuahua, and a Jack Russell Terrier.
Okay.
Lily is a very smart dog. She would take walks by herself. We didn't even know it. She was going out the gate and taking walks until neighbors on the next block over would call me and say, I saw your dog out walking down the street. I'm like, what? So yeah. And Lily's a little bipolar too. She's she has very strong feelings about who she likes and doesn't like.
Nice. Are those the animals you feel the most comfortable with owning or
Yeah.
being around?
Yes, I like dogs. I do, but one of my problems is I'm highly allergic to animal dander, so I can't
Oh.
really be around animals very much.
Ah, damn.
Why are you trying to give me a dog?
No, 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 no. I love dogs. My eyes just almost rolled up in the back of my head because I love animals in general, but
Hmm.
I love dogs, and I've always loved the dog park. I love
Hmm.
Tracy's Double Danes.
Hmm.
I love dog. My mom actually, she works with does in-home healthcare, and she invited me to meet her patients, and they have this little Pomeranian Shih Tzu, and her name's Misty, and she barked at me when I was outside. But when I came in, she just like was this little tater tot, white, fluffy, hypoallergenic nugget of love that it was
Yeah.
just great. And they were like, "Oh, if we go, then you can have her," and it was just like, "Oh my god." Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk about a little bit about your curation,
Hmm.
um, and uh, and then we're gonna wrap up the presentation part and then open it up for like more like free flowing discussion.
Hmm.
So so I have this one here because this was also a collaboration.
Hmm.
Can you talk about this picture and where was it and what was happening?
That is at Three Walls. I was selected for their in-session program. I think that was in 2017, but I'm not sure about the dates. I'm not very good at that. But I um, I wrote the program, and it uh, it required collaboration with other artists, and I chose Ennis Martin, who is a Chicago artist and dancer, performance artist, who you can see in the center, and I chose Renee Baker, who is a musician of extremely high caliber. And I chose Dr. Nataka Moore, who is a psychologist with, um, oh my goodness, I can't think of the school, Adler School of Professional Psychology. And she kind of guided the talks. So that was Artificial Light 365 Days of Sun. And that was, I spoke earlier about the sun drawings. And so basically this program was about depression and how, you know, what people can do to alleviate some of the symptoms of that. And Renee did a wonderful job with the music. At one point she just stopped right in the middle, and everyone was all very uncomfortable and didn't know what to do. And her reasoning behind that was to give people kind of a taste of what, people who are dealing with things like depressive disorders and other types of mental health disorders, what they feel like, during episodes. Um, and so, Dr. Moore kind of pulled it all together because she had a lot of knowledge about, the topic at hand. So there was, this live dance performance, there was music, and then my installation on the wall in the background.
Would you like me to show the clip from this?
Sure, that if you'd like.
Hold on. I'm sorry, everyone. I think I can't play this video right now. I have to download it to play it. So, sorry for the technical difficulties. I'm going to go back to the slideshow and
I'd be down to wait. I mean, how long it takes to download a minute video?
I'm gonna download it now and then we'll
Yeah.
come back to it.
Okay. It seems interesting. Plus, I'm sure the music sounds amazing.
It was I was there. It was a great performance. Oh my God. Thank you so much, Makeba, for that. Okay, I'm
Thanks for
downloading
coming.
it. It was beautiful. Okay, so we'll come back to that. And uh are there other things that you want to say about this before we
Um,
okay.
I was honored that I was selected, and a lot of people came. That was really wonderful. And I think I got point across. One of the things that did start happening during that performance is that some of the pieces started falling off the wall, which, even though it wasn't planned that way, it fit, you know. And I remember I got up in the middle and just started slapping them back on the wall in this sort of frustrated, kind of energy. And it all worked. It all fit together, with the topic at hand.
So this is an exhibit, and I can't remember what year it was. I think it was 2015.
2015.
Yeah,
2015. Hmm.
yeah.
I
You're
think that was, mhm.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You're the
I was gonna
moderator.
say, I was gonna say that you curated this exhibition and you organized the events around this, and it was selected as a featured art program for Chicago Artist Month. And it was an
Mhm.
amazing exhibit to see. I wish I could have found a really sharp photo of it. There's an article that was in DNA Info, and the title can be Googled, that showcased this show, like also wrote about the show. And could you let us know what you curated it about and why you did it, and what kinds of works and what were the parameters of the art in the show?
Okay, so the space that the exhibition was mounted in, start there. It was previously it was Nicole Gallery. It was like her third space, but Nicole became ill and asked me to kind of oversee the gallery and to consolidate her art. And so I was there for that purpose initially because I had worked for her before in the past. I was her assistant director when she had Nicole Gallery in the River North area. Um, so as time went on, her family packed everything up and I was still in the space. I took over paying the rent, which was pretty astronomical because it was in Bucktown and a duplex loft space. And I had all of this space and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do a show. It was Chicago Artist Month. So I wrote this program, Migrations in Black and White. And basically it was about how Black artists have very little visibility in North Side galleries. Um, so having this space, in Bucktown, in the heart of, the epicenter of art, in Chicago, I was like, this is a great opportunity to bring, some of the artists that I know to the side of town and have a show that uh, highlights just Black artists because that doesn't happen, you know. Um, so it's also based, it was based loosely on the Great Migration when African Americans migrated from the South following, slavery to northern states. Um, so, that's how it all connects, you know, but it's loosely based on that because it's not a show. It wasn't a show about race. It was about uh, black and white. All of the art had to be pure black and white. There were no gray tones, no shading, no mixing, none of that. It had to be pure black and white. Um, and I found it fascinating that many of the artists who I invited to do the show, they were frustrated. They really they found it very challenging to work in that way. But that was my point. I wanted to challenge them. I wanted them to go, beyond what they normally do, to go outside of their, their boundaries. And they were all very happy at the end, and many of them continued to do black and white work after the show and have had exhibitions based on black and white work. Now, the show was originally intended to be a traveling show, hence the word migration. I wanted it to migrate from city to, different sides of town in Chicago, and also to different cities and neighborhoods and states, and possibly international at some point. And I'm working on that. I have continued to write programs, but I've not presented them yet. So look for more migration themed exhibitions going forward. And some of the artists in that show were, let's see, David Anthony Geary, Liz LaRue, Marcus Sterling, Aline Fantasela. It was just like a powerhouse exhibition. It was really amazing. And it was just really sharp and strong because it was very graphic. Everything's just like stark black and white. The only exception was the artist had choice of using red, white, or black frames.
So right now I'm going to try to show that little video, and then we're going to open it up for questions after that. Because I think people might have questions, and we'll just have a short question and answer. And let's see. It's just a little taste.
I'd like to mention that there was no rehearsal for that. Renee and her trio were playing what they played. Ennis was vibing off of what they were playing. And it just, was very organic, which is how I like to work. The way that the show was mounted and, installed, it was in this sort of undulating pattern, which kind of speaks to the highs and lows that people who have, depressive disorders or any other kind, what they experience when, with that sort of disorder. And the music was, feeding off of that, feeding off, Ennis was feeding off of the music. So it was a very, organically cohesive piece.
Thank you, Makeba. That was a wonderful little snippet of your work. And actually, I'm going to share there. Please check her Facebook, and also especially your Instagram. And actually, I'm going to share the screen of the handle so everyone can see them. If you search her name, you will find it.
Yeah, you can just do a Google search. You'll probably.
Yeah. So
It's
I
funny
hope
because
I,
years ago, so I was just saying, years ago, I remember early in my career, I would go on Google to search artist names, and they'd have all these pages and pages and pages of, information. I'm like, I want that. So, I mean, I really started like focusing on that and how I could get more press and be seen more, in Google search.
so where we're at right now is, do people have questions for Makeba about her work, about her as an artist, about her as a curator? Someone earlier asked about your American Me series. I think it was Naomi. Yeah. Go ahead, Naomi.
Hi, Naomi.
Hi, Makeba.
Hi. Wasn't I in your spotlight a couple of weeks ago, I think?
Yes, I was. So I absolutely love your work. I love the Sun series. I loved the I tried to catch your the Blue series. What is it? The Blue, what was it
The
again?
Best of Blue, a
Best
work in
of Blue.
progress. Mhm.
I remember that was displayed at the Loyola. There was a Loyola Museum.
It was at Adler University.
Oh, Adler. Okay. And I tried to catch that show, and I was working an office job back then, and I just kept missing. I kept trying to go. I was like, I'll go after work, and I would work late, and then I'm not working an office job anymore. Yay. But but yeah, so I missed that one, but I remember I wanted to see it really bad. So I just wanted to ask, like, when you start a series, like, what's your process? I know that sometimes you said maybe it's just you get inspired by an old piece, or like you're working on something and then you kind of bring older pieces into it. But do you ever plan out like a series, like, and what would be your process? Or and yeah, so I just had a question about that.
I tried to plan series. Doesn't always work that way for me, because I'm so organic in my process. Like I said, when I finally, that energy hits me, it can go in any direction. And sometimes things start out one way and turn into something totally different. Um, for me, it's getting something onto the picture plane. Once I get something started, because that's the hardest part, getting started. For most artists, you like, I don't have the motivation, I don't have the energy. But if you can just, you know, rein yourself in, put some materials in front of yourself and slap something on top of, whatever it is you're working on, and take it from there. Eventually something will reveal itself to you and you can work from that. Did I answer your question okay?
Yeah, and I think we're very similar. Where, yeah, like I feel like it's hard for me to do a series. Like I do struggle with that, and like I
Mhm.
only get so far, like maybe 4 little pieces. But yeah, and I can't seem to get past that. But yeah, I admire your work, and I'm hoping we see each other again soon.
Yes, I know, me too. It's been a long time. And like I said, just do something, even
And
if
I also wanted, as the American Me series, you said that's ongoing, and so you haven't exhibited that one, right? Or
American
have you?
Me, oh, the Missing series, yeah, American Me Missing. So I should explain. There were other pieces, like there were pieces in the textile series that were titled America Me, and that's all about being a person of color in this country, and throughout the world, really, when you think about it. Uh, and it's like, tell my story too. America Me, make me American too. That's basically what that's about. But I don't know if I'm answering what you were asking.
Yeah, so it's ongoing, like you're still creating that. Yeah. Okay. Great to see your work. Thank you.
Oh, thank you too. Thanks for coming.
Does anyone else have
Okay.
any questions? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Makeba. I remember earlier in your introduction, your story, you mentioned that you were given a gift from your mother, and she gave it to you because you knew that you were an artist and she knew that you were an artist, but you felt slightly offended by, I think it was the crayons that were numbered. Was there anything else at a young age, at that early age, that you identified with that you knew that like that must mean that I'm an artist?
Because I grew up with a creative aunt who was always making something. You know, she mostly focused on clothing, but she also, you know, painted and drew things and stuff. I was always, you know, I always honed in on that. And then I also was mentored from a very young age by the Jesuit priest that I mentioned in the beginning. So it was always, it just was always there. I can't really think of a time when I did not see myself as an artist. I think it was solidified when I started working with Father Hasse, that I realized, oh yeah, I'm an artist. You know, before I was just probably just making things and not self-identifying under any, you know, titles. But eventually I came to the realization that that is what I was.
Okay, I have another question.
Mhm.
Everybody likes to ask your favorite color, but what are two colors you could do without?
Two colors I could do without. I don't know if that.
Forever. You can't use them forever, Makeba.
Oh my
You say these
God.
two colors, you just gone. They're gone.
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. Um,
One color then.
One color. I love color. Do you
Yeah.
see my
Don't do it.
you see my shirt? I love color. And I throw them all into the pot. I do color variations and mixtures that a lot of artists wouldn't even dream of putting together, you know. But if I had one color, tan.
Tan. Okay. All right. That's a color.
Yeah. Yeah.
Helen, do
Not,
you have a
not one-
question? Oh, sorry.
Yes, I do. Hi, Makeba. I love you and I love your work so much. And I love you so much. My question is, do you have, well, because as a depressive person myself, I don't know, I like latch on to certain mantras or quotes. So I want to know if you have like a quote or a mantra that you could like tell yourself that like, helps you get through some tough times, or you just, makes you feel good.
I've learned to rein myself in. You know, during hard times, you know, that's really when it hits me the hardest, I guess. And during the winter months. And oddly enough, this winter has been very mild for me. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that I'm not engaging with a lot of people and, you know, situations. And I'm basically just in my work, you know, and when I'm in my work, I'm happy, you know. So, but I do meditate, and occasionally I do yoga. I haven't been able to have a consistent practice with that, but I do try from time to time. But I meditate on a regular basis, and you know, I say to myself, you know, I am happy, healthy, wealthy, uh, wise. You know, I just say those things over and over and over and over again. And it has a way of transforming my feelings into more positive, you know, thoughts.
I'm writing this down. You said I am happy, healthy, wealthy, and what else?
Wise and free.
Wise and free.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. It means a lot to me.
You're welcome. The more you tell yourself something, the more you feel it. That's how I think. I mean, I do strongly believe in our thoughts have a way of manifesting outside of ourselves, you know, and within ourselves. You know, so you have to be careful about what you think. If you find yourself thinking, you know, sad thoughts or negative thoughts, you need to change the channel. You know, it's like, okay, like I'll catch myself, whoa, no, I don't want to go down that road. You know.
Oh, she cut out for a minute, but I think she'll be back.
It really helps a lot.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I saw a question from Dewan. I don't know if he's still there, but I did see a question somewhere in there. It like popped up on the screen and I didn't answer it at that time. I don't know if there are other people who have questions, but I'm here to answer them.
Ko.
Yeah, I have a question. Hi, Makeba.
Hi.
A great presentation tonight. I love the variety of work. One thing I was wondering about in your big mixed media pieces, what are you using for adhesive? Um, like, especially when you use like paper materials and things.
I use PVA glue.
Mhm.
Sometimes I use Mod Podge, you know. Sometimes I let the acrylic paint hold
Okay.
what I'm putting on. Because acrylic paint is plastic. It's like glue, in some ways. But I don't think that's the most effective material to use. I think, PVA glue, with correct pH balance and all of that, acid free and all of that kind of stuff is probably the best to use.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have a question?
Have you ever been to a symphony, Makeba?
I have several, yes, and I enjoyed it.
Wow, I still haven't gone. I should have gone when I was there, but I heard they're beautiful. They're amazing, and I'm glad to hear somebody speak well of it.
Do you listen to any type of music while you're creating?
I was just about to say that. I am so deeply inspired by music. I love jazz, but I love all music from Andean to Zydeco. I can find something that I love about music. But yes, music just really strongly informs my work. It sets up the vibe, the energy of, the pace that I work in and all of that. I have created entire series off of, albums. Like I remember at one point, now jazz is pretty consistent, but at one point I remember when Coldplay was really popular. I was so into Coldplay. I was playing that like constantly while I painted, and the work starts to feel like the music, depending on what you're listening to. So yes, I do enjoy listening to music while I'm working. In fact, I don't really watch. I don't own a television. I haven't for years. So um, music is usually what's going on in my space. I read and I listen to music. And also, literature informs my work. I was just actually accepted into a show, Afrofuturistic show, and I'm creating work for that show right now that is inspired by Octavia Butler's work. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she is a sci-fi writer who's won the Nebula Awards and several others. And her work is about, some of it is like apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic in its nature. I remember reading her books like 20 years ago, and I was like terrified because I could see some of the things coming into fruition at that time. I'm like, this is going to get worse. And it is. 20 years later, we're like dead smack in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, in her books, there was a prequel and a sequel. What's it called? Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents. I highly recommend those books, but they did scare me. But she even spoke about 45 in those books without a name, of course, because he wasn't a thing at that time. But yeah, it's just like when he was elected, I was like, oh no, it's happening, So yeah, I love reading. I'm a certified bibliophile. And I don't think I can live without music. I mean, music is so important to me.
What did you listen to today?
I didn't listen to any music today, actually, oddly enough. I've been just on the run trying to prepare for this. I was writing a proposal all like for the past 2 weeks that I finally submitted. Oh, I've been really busy. I've been painting a lot. And generally when I'm painting, I'm playing music, but I also like silence. So there's a lot of inspiration to be found in silence as well.
Oh yeah.
It puts me in a more meditative mode. Music is a more energetic mode for me. And when I want, when I'm trying to work on something that requires a tremendous amount of focus, I tend to do it in silence.
Okay. Growing up, were you interested in playing any instruments?
I tried playing the flute for a while. I don't have that kind of rhythm. I have rhythm. I can dance. Pretty good dancer, if I must say so myself. And I sing, or I used to. I sang in a reggae band for a short period of time.
Nice.
What's my zodiac? I'm sorry, I just saw that pop up on the screen. I'm on the cusp of Libra and Scorpio. It's a little scary sometimes because I can be pulled in two different directions and everything in between. I also have a Sagittarius moon. My Venus is in Scorpio and Mars. I mean, I have Venus in Scorpio and Mars in Scorpio. So I'm kind of a mixed bag, you know, astrologically speaking. Being on that cusp, that's sometimes I can't stand myself. So I understand.
Yeah, I was wondering, just because of all your artwork, you do a lot of different things, and I was like, I just wonder.
Who am I? Who's speaking?
Natalia.
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 Sorry.
It was your talk that I was in.
Yeah, that was mine last time too.
A couple of weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah. No, when Tracy said that you were gonna be on, I'm like, I know her. I've never met you, but I know your art.
Yeah, hopefully one day we'll meet, because I really love your presentation as well.
Oh, thank you very much. I love your work too. When also the way your artwork changes with your life too and everything. It's like documentation. I love it.
I remember telling Tracy after your talk that it's like I see a lot of similarities in the way we work and, you know, some of the things we've done in our lives. And I know I'm probably a lot older than you, but I definitely saw, you know, some strong similarities. Like you're working with youth. I love working with youth. You know, I've done, I was the youth art program director. I founded art programs at schools before. They didn't have art programs, and I'm like, they've got to have art, you know? So I would go into the schools, like, I don't care if you pay me $10 an hour, I need to do this for these kids. And I would go into schools to promote art programs. There have been times when I would just gather up all my art supplies and go to the park and spread them out to invite whoever wanted to create art, you know, the opportunity to do so. So yeah, I really like seeing that in the presentation. You know. Yeah, the kids need.
I started AnySquared too, you
know. Yes. I tried being in coming to AnySquared open studios on Wednesdays. It's too much energy for me. I can't. It's just like everything's going on. It's
like when I want to be around people, I'll go to AnySquared. But for the most part, like you said, once you're in your artwork, you're just focused and you just keep working and working. It's just like I have everything here, you know.
Yeah, it becomes it's a little sensory overload for me. I've done it and I've been there, you know, before and managed to get through it. But as I mentioned before, I have ADD, so all of that energy going on, you know, at one time can be a bit much for me. And I don't know what's going on at some point. Yeah. In this closed environment, you know.
I miss the AnySquared energy here pre-COVID, but it's only once a week. Adrian has a question for you. It says, are there other visual artists you consciously look to for inspiration? Is inspiration something you seek for art or more a reaction? Those are two questions. It's in the chat.
Inspiration, I'm not seeing the chat on my screen. I don't know why, but because I know there are other questions that I want to answer everyone. I don't want anyone to be missed. But you know, I was thinking about that earlier today, oddly enough, how I'm inspired and does the work of other artists come into play? I try to avoid that. I don't, I've had situations where I've had people pretty outright copy what I do. When I was doing really kind of like color blocked art, where it was just like line and color, and it's easy to to mimic that sort of art, you know. So you know, I try to avoid that because I don't want to offend any artists. Some people, you know, people say it should be, you know, you should take it as a compliment, but I really don't like anyone copying what I do. I don't like it, and I don't want to do that to anyone else. So I avoid it. Now there are artists that I respect, you know, and subconsciously maybe some of their things kind of seep into what I'm doing, but it's never an intentional thing. One of my dearest friends, he passed away early last year, Dale Washington. Dale was one of the most amazing artists to me. I mean, he was so prolific. I mean, he created, like I do, like a million different types of stuff, but you always knew his work when you saw it. I'm sure that some of his style or ways of working may have seeped into my process because he was very influential in the direction of my art, in that he kind of adopted me into and embraced me within the Black art community. I was on the north side, so I was around all types of artists, you know, but not many Black artists. So Dell kind of pulled me into, you know, the specific Black art community, primarily, which is, you know, the South Side of artists. And, you know, a lot of the artists work in the same way. But I've been told many times that there's nobody who does what I do, you know. So it's like, I don't know where you came from, but you're doing some other level stuff. I don't know about all of that, but I just kind of work from within, you know, whatever I'm feeling. It's very feeling based. It's very organically done, where I don't like refer to what am I trying to say? You know, images. I paint from my head. I don't use what am I looking for, Tracy? You
You
know,
don't
when you
use
have a
references, it all comes
references.
from your
That's the word
head.
I'm looking for. I don't use references. I mean, I did use a reference for the Dakota Bright piece, you know,
Mhm.
because I didn't know the young man and I had nothing to start with, and working, you know, from my head, it's kind of hard to do something like that. Working from my imagination makes it difficult to do portrait work, you know. And I often tell people that if I do a portrait of you, it may not look so much like you as it feels like you. You will feel yourself in it, but it may not, you know, be what you consider yourself to look like. But other people might see it and recognize you. Oddly, no, I don't know how to explain how I do that, but I do. Thank you, Naomi. I hope to see you soon too.
So
I don't know who's still here. Is there a way?
uh
I had a
there's
question.
oh sure.
Okay. Who's speaking?
Robert.
Because I can't. Okay. Hi, Robert.
I was gonna say, I think you and Natalia would be a really interesting collaboration.
I think so too. Yeah.
Her piece, Amor y Paz.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I think about it, I was fascinated by Sermon, kind of in the same way I was fascinated by her Amor y Paz piece. And
Okay.
I'm saying that you all would make a very interesting and collaboration. There's some similarities there.
Mm-hmm.
And now when I was thinking about it, when you mentioned her presentation, I'm like, yeah, now it's clicking. And I'm thinking, wow, that would be a really great, an interesting collaboration.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
It isn't a suggestion, it's just an observation.
No, that's
That
fine.
in here now.
Absolutely. I welcome that, Natalia, if you're still here.
Yeah.
Perhaps we should collaborate in the future. I think that would be wonderful.
No, yeah, I would love that. That'd be amazing. That'd be an honor. Like just to bounce off each other some ideas. I think that'd be pretty cool to work on a big canvas.
Absolutely. I always feel like there's always something to learn, and you never know where that's going to come from. You know, I actually was inspired greatly by a lot of my students in the past. You know, when I worked for that youth art program, you know, that youth social services agency, the art that, and I'm not connecting, that to you per se, but I'm saying, the art of young people, like really young people, is so pure, when they haven't been touched by the educational system as it relates to art. It's so pure and powerful in a way that it's coming directly from them and it's not been influenced by anything or anyone. That's one of the reasons why I'm not an academic artist, because I went to design school, but it was after I had a 20-year career as an artist. And I always felt when I tried to, uh, learn art, or I don't know how to put it, but it always felt like it was taking something away from me. Yes, I may have gained some techniques and things like that, but I can find that out on my own too. And which is what I've done. And you can also, discover through experimentation, which is something else I like to do. Sometimes, it's like I think, what will happen if I dump this entire painting in a vat of bleach? What would be the end result of that? And I'll do it just to see what happens.
Yeah.
You end up with something really phenomenal sometimes. Sometimes you end up with a complete mess too, of course, but sometimes you discover something new.
I like that experimentation.
Another art, a couple of artists I know who are like work out some things through experimentation. Marvin Tate. Marvin Tate is a phenomenal artist. Yes. And
he was on before, but he left.
I saw him pop up on the screen. And Theaster Gates also. Theaster did a lot of work, where he used experimentation over the years. Yeah. I knew Theaster before he blew up. So. And I knew Marvin before he blew up too.
I had one more question.
Okay.
Robert, where are you? I don't see him. Robert? He had one more question.
I heard him say, I have one more question, and then he disappeared.
I don't know what happened.
Can you read off to me who's still here?
Alan, Emerson
Alan.
Hicks, who's not on the screen, Ayana.
My daughter.
Yes. Beverly, Ashley, Adrian.
Adrian Scott?
I don't know. I think so.
Okay. If it's Adrian Scott, hey Adrian.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Lawrence has a question.
It took me a lot to just say that.
Well, I always hide on the video. I understand. I was so nervous today, and I've done this a million times, but it just never gets old. It's like having to be in front of the public always kind of terrifies me because I'm actually pretty shy. But anyhow, what's your question?
So I'm working on my art pieces, right? And honestly, I have not, I went to one art class, in college, I'm saying. And so I understand the part of not being touched by the academic system, meaning I'm not so influenced by techniques and stuff. So I'm more so go internally and just throw whatever I feel onto a page, in whatever form I want. So I like that, but also at the same time, I want to learn the process, but it just costs a lot of money to take those courses and stuff. So
I'm very fortunate in that I received a lot of training in the early years. Father Hasse, like I said, I was learning lithography in elementary school. I was learning all sorts of techniques and styles and disciplines while in elementary school. And you would think that you wouldn't remember those things, but I did, oddly enough. Color theory. So when I took design school and had to take color theory classes, I already knew it, although I didn't realize I knew it. It just kind of naturally presented itself very easily. I had it. Yeah. I think that I've forgotten things often, but they're there. They're just, in one of the cells in my brain somewhere that I have to, you know, coerce out, So did you have a question?
Yes, I was just I want to also comment. There are things probably I know, but I don't know, if that makes sense. I
Yeah.
so agree with that statement.
Mhm.
Um, but I wanted to ask, what has driven you to continue going? Because I know like starting is a
Yeah.
whole different process, but like continuing and persevering through that is like something else in itself.
Right. Yeah, a lot of artists, a lot of people just can't hack the arts because it's a dog eat dog, hard knocks life. Some advice I was given a long time ago by an entrepreneur that I know, someone who was always creating businesses. He said, you should always do what you do because you love it. You should do the thing that you would do even if you aren't getting paid for it, because eventually it'll pay off. And so I guess that would be my advice. Do what you love and the money will follow, as the old saying goes. I'm still not wealthy, I don't know if I'll ever be, but I don't care because I'm doing what I love. I'm comfortable. I'm able to take care of myself. I have my own place. I have a place to work. I eat every day. And that's what's important to me. I could care less. I'm not a materialistic person. So I don't really care about having a lot of money. That's not why I became an artist. And some people, have dreams of becoming, this world famous artist who is, super rich and all of that. And to be honest, that's not the biggest reality. Most artists don't get that, but if it's what you love, continue to do it.
I think Robert
Good.
had a question. Robert, are you coming back for your question? Oh, we can't hear you, hon.
By the way, I cannot not make art. That's just not an option. It's so intrinsically a part of who I am. If I stop making art, I get sad. I don't function properly. I have to make art. It's
I think I want to say thank you for answering the question.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
welcome. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Robert, can you talk? We still can't hear you.
Can I add one more thing
I think
to
that
the art
can
thing?
you type it in the chat and we'll ask? Yes, ask.
I wanted to add one more thing to what he was saying of like what would help you pursue and continue.
Mhm.
And like yeah, as an artist, like I focus a lot on my art and I never think about like the business side of it.
Mhm.
But
And
as of lately, I've been trying to market myself more as a business, and it's been really hard. And it's weird how much
Mhm.
time you actually have to focus and like put into that alone.
Yeah.
Like if you want that, then I would assume that you would have to find a manager or someone that would help you guide you. Maybe find a mentor.
Yes, I would say that probably 75% of artists are like almost completely right-brained. So it's the creative side, more than anything. And so a lot of the business part does fall to the wayside. I'm very fortunate in that I have kind of almost an even, uh, you know, kill with that. I'm okay with the business side. It's not my preference. I prefer the art side. I prefer the right brain stuff, but I know that I have to do the other stuff too. But what I do is I rely a lot on my friends who, have good computer skills, who have, the things that I'm missing, I find in other people. And I'll either trade them for art or I'll pay them when I can. If I have, because, artists, you can be like artist rich, one month and be completely broke the next. So I remember one winter or one year, I sold about $15,000 worth of art in a 2 or 3 month period. And then I didn't sell anything for the next 6 months. And mind you, that $15,000 was through gallery sales. So I only got half of it. So, there are a lot of skills that you have to be an artist. You have to have money management skills. You have to have good people skills, social skills, to be able to deal with, potential clients, because if you turn people off, that could be a problem. So you have to know how to schmooze, you have to have good record keeping skills, paperwork skills, administrative skills. There's so much involved that
Yeah,
it
that's
can
like a lot.
it can be very frustrating at times, and believe me, I've been frustrated by it, but I always tell myself, I'm still here. I've been here all these years and I'm going to stay here. I just have to keep producing. And that really is the most important thing. Keep making the work. Because if you don't have the work, you're not going anywhere. If you don't have anything to present, you're not an artist. I mean, what are you going to do? If a show comes up and you don't have anything to put in it, then you're in a bad place. So the most important thing is to keep doing the work. Always do the work, despite not having all of the other components to, be successful as an artist. Because if you have the work, there will be people who will come along to help you with the other parts. Like Tracy, because Tracy sure helped me, a lot with this presentation and other things,
Oh, thank you. That was great. That was good to know.
Robert has one last, I think we'll do a last call for questions and wrap up, because it's been a good long talk. Is there a topic you would like to address in your work but haven't yet?
I'm not sure I can answer that, because it just kind of happens as it happens with me. But there are things that I'd like to do more of. I like to explore the discipline of sculpture more. I'd like to perhaps do more photography. I used to do some photography, but when I was doing photography, it was, I was doing it the old-fashioned way with the dark room and all of that, and I couldn't deal with the chemicals. I'd like to. I started designing. I started out as a fashion designer. I wanted to design clothing. But I painted on everything that I did. So I realized I was a painter, jewelry design and clothing design and all of that stuff. But I painted on everything. Even the first jewelry that I was making was, I painted on papyrus paper and encased it in acrylic and then added beads and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's so much that I would like to do. And you could probably figure that out just by looking at my, the work I've done over the years. It's just like all over the place. I'm kind of all over the place, and I wouldn't change that about me for anything. I think,
Don't change.
Listening to galleries and them wanting you to homogenize everything, I think that's stifling. I think that you have to just kind of go with the flow and feel the energy around you and create based on that. At least that's what works for me.
Robert says sculpture would be interesting, but I know that you've done sculpture.
I've done some sculpture, but I think I specifically would like to do work in some mediums media that I haven't worked in yet, like metal sculpture. I've worked with clay a little bit, but I'd like to do more. I've also worked with, found objects and recycled materials. One of the images that you showed was this kind of tall piece, this sculpture piece. That's done with cardboard, but it was treated in a way. It was like cardboard, clay, mud, a lot of earthy, natural materials. And it was meant to be ephemeral. And it was, it was for a show that it was called Nowhere to Throw Away To. It was curated by Mashani Landfair. It was years ago in collaboration with Fahim Majid. And it was his outdoor, I forget what he called it, but it was this location on the south side where he had sort of an installation and these spaces where artists were curating other shows in. I've done so much stuff over the years that I can't remember what I did anymore at this point. I can't remember the details of things. So excuse me for my lack of consistent knowledge here. Love to you too, Helen. So good to see you.
We're going to wrap it up. And because this has been such an engaging talk and it's been amazing and wonderful. And I think it will be inspirational to a lot of the young people who are in our group. And thank you so much.
You too. Thanks for inviting me. I had a great time. I was so nervous, but it felt very comfortable once we got into it.
Yay! I was hoping for that. Thank you, Makeba. You are amazing and wonderful artist.
All right. Have a good night, everyone, and thanks for coming.
Have a good night. Check social media for future Zooms and future streams.